Hello, everybody. Welcome to Adobe Live Presents Home for the Holidays 2023 edition. Oh boy, time really flies. I'm Evan Abrams. Thanks for being with us. Thanks for joining me here on the various streams, whether you're watching over on YouTube, whether you are hanging out with us on Behance. We're happy to have you here for a whole day, a whole week of holiday programming. I guess I'm kicking it off. I'm usually at the end of the day, so it's too much responsibility for me here. Hello, everyone, hanging out in the chat. CJ, keeping everybody on their toes. Clever Devlin, Oliver, General Kenobi. Hello. There's a name I've not heard in a while. Yeah, I'm your first host for the week, but all week long we've got sweepstakes going on, so you can win fabulous prizes. Not totally sure what they are, but there's a tab over on Behance where you can click enter, fill out the form. If you're in the US, you can win some stuff. And pretty sure every stream has some interesting downloads you can get your hands on, so check out the description to get those. Hey there, Robert, how you doing? And yeah, everyone's got some festive stuff they're going to be sharing with you. We have a rich full day of video activities today, so I'll be taking you through some looping retro computer graphics, some real Windows 95, probably older than Windows 95 style graphics is what I'm going to be cooking up for you here today. But also, we're going to have animating holiday cards. There's going to be some editing of recipe videos. There's going to be so many lovely, tasty things going on. So bear with me, stick around, and share your holiday memories in the chat. But let me show you what we're going to be making, what I'm going to be talking to you through today. Have a look at my screen. We're going to be hanging out inside of After Effects for the next hour, and we're going to be making this. I might as well press play on the loop so we can enjoy it. This was my submission for Adobe's Yule Log stuff, which in my case involved a fair amount of kind of tongue-in-cheek kind of stuff here. So we've got, is this playing back real time? Hold on. Yeah, I think so. Kinda. All right. So we've got here this kind of interface object going through. Hey, Sean, how's it going? And for me, the holidays invariably were a lot of tech support at my grandparents' place. So it was always trying to fix things on their computer and make that work. But also, it's probably the only time I used to live in a fairly rural place. So you don't get out to the computer store very often and get your favorite LucasArts adventure game CD-ROMs. So this is the type of thing we're going to be looking at. A lot of kind of retro graphics. We're going to be reducing sort of the resolution of things. We're going to be creating some loops. We're going to be having things be a little bit choppy, a little bit shaky down here, but also some smooth stuff happening. If there's anything about what you see here that you want me to kind of focus in on, we've got some Santa skiing down the hill in ski gratuit, which would be ski free for those in Quebec. We've got some building of a snowman made out of icons as we put that back together. We've got, of course, the fire, the candy cane. We've got the 12 Days of Christmas going through as install items right here, which is nice. Some ASCII art ornaments. So if you're interested in those, we can definitely dip into that. We'll talk about sort of the structure of how these types of things are created. It's a very procedural type of thing, so you can actually apply this to any type of art that you want to load into there. What else we got going on? We got Snow Sweeper. This is a very mechanically made, we'll say a lot of manual keyframes to bring something like this together. But I should stop putting my mouse over top of the fictitious mouse. That's probably causing a lot of confusion. But we were able to go through the kind of Snow Sweeper protocol there. So lots of stuff to kind of dig into. But before we get too far down the road, if you want to download these files, I believe those are on offer in the description. So get your hands on those. And also, I have created a Mogurt for people, a motion graphics template that if you're not into After Effects, if you don't get in there, but you like this kind of retro computer style, we've actually got a little Mogurt that I created, a motion graphics template that you can enjoy this type of window here. So to speed my own process along, this type of thing here was super helpful because I'm able to really quickly just swap out whatever the contents are in here. So if you download the motion graphics template, open it up in Premiere, you're going to see these types of controls down here. So we can change things about the header bar, for example. So I might type in Sherbert, let's say. So we might type in some different text, and that'll load up when this opens. And we can swap out even the contents here. So if we just come into, we'll get a different image, perhaps my dog, right? And then we can scale that down a little bit, move it around, get that positioned exactly where you'd like it. If your content is of different size, we can actually scale up the main window. So these controls here help us to do that. So we can make that happen. And again, everything about this is procedural. So it's all linked together. It's all going to work nice and tightly. But yeah, if this type of color scheme isn't for you, change the header text color if you want. We could change the header bar spans up there if we want those to be a little bit more like that. We could say change the header bar into like a inverted, just invert our colors here. So all those sorts of things. You can have beautiful interfaces in your Windows 3.1 type of thing. I kind of like that it looks like a funny little face when it goes. So yeah, enjoy that. Motion graphics template. This is great if you're doing kind of call outs or something in vlogs or whatever. You have some images that boop, boop, show up and then animate away. It's got time remapped, frozen regions, top and tail, so that it'll expand and compress as you need it. You just grab the ends, move it around, and it'll stretch to what you need. But yeah, so ends. Talking about this giveaway. Let's get into the meat and potatoes of this thing and discuss some of the objects that we're here to talk about. So first off, I want to talk about the background image back here. Now, when it comes to styling things to make them feel more retro, whether it's images or videos, there are some effects that we can just throw down onto something and we can really, I'm going to say sort of degenerate. That's not the right word, but we can pixelate things and we can simplify them. Annika, hello. So it's not just that an image has fewer pixels. Older technology also had just fewer colors. So we're in sort of the billions of colors, but before we were in kind of the millions of colors. And this is all down to the kind of multiplication and scale that comes with increasing the number of bits per channel that you can have in an image. So I'm going to just solo our background image here so that we can enjoy it. And let's just have a little look at some of the effects that have been applied on here. Now, this is an image that I generated in Firefly. So I had a few permutations of creating kind of a hyper exaggerated type of scene out here. And we got trees and that, but it's got the full range of colors, right? It's got all the colors. And if we want this to appear older, what we need to do is reduce literally the number of colors that this is able to produce. So an effect that you can throw down on these things is Posterize. So Posterize, it's under the Stylize family of effects. And Posterize is limiting the number of bits per channel that we can see here in this image. Now, you might not be super familiar with Posterize, so let me just give you a little, we'll say like a little primer on that. So I'm just going to really quickly make a solid here. And I'm going to put on here a ramp, and then I'm going to put on here a colorama, which will give us this is a quick way to get a rainbow, basically. It's a quick way to make a rainbow. And if we posterize this, if I were to posterize the rainbow, and I were to say 8, you can see that it creates banding on here. That's the first thing you're going to notice. So of all the colors we got, suddenly we got banding. Now, as I reduce this number, let's say I bring it down to a 4, or let's say I bring it down to a 2, right? At a 2, well, how many colors are there? Well, I'm seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in fact, we'd probably see 8 of them, right? If we also had black and white in here. Now, why is it that if I posterize at a level 2, we actually end up with 8 different colors? Well, imagine the red, green, and blue channels at a level 2 can only be on or off, right? It's a binary. And so if red is on, but the other switches are off, we end up with red. If blue is on and the other switches are off, we end up with blue. Green, same thing. Now, what if we put on 2 of the switches and one of them goes off? And what if we put on the other 2 and the other 2? What if we put all of them on? What if we put all of them off, right? So each color channel, RGB, now only has the 2 switches that it can go through. If I increase this from 2 to 4, doubling, right? I'm going to double that number. You see the number of bands increases, but it doesn't, it doesn't double. We're getting way more bands. And that's because each RGB now has 4 click, click, click levels of switch that it can have. So that's posterization, if that helps. If I kick the colorama out of here, though, you'll notice that 1, 2, 3, 4 equals 4 levels, right? And that's because we're only dealing with black and white pixels. I've trimmed this down. We're only talking about, from black to white. And so this number actually directly corresponds to the number that you're going to see going on out here. So keep that in mind as we are posterizing things, that this number is the number per channel of switches that are available. So I hope that makes sense with regards to posterization. All right, so it's a little primer on posterization. Okay, so if I apply posterization to this, right, and I kick it down to a 4, I'm saying 4 bits per channel. Maybe you want to do 8, maybe you want to do 16. And if you're familiar with 8 and 16-bit graphics, right, here you go. Look at that. We've turned that image into a 16-bit graphic. Well, let's dial it down to 8 and see if we like that. But this is not how graphics would have been made, right? They would not have been created as making a beautiful picture and then posterizing it. Generally, you see a lot of noise introduced into an image, which produces smooth gradients. You can actually see down here in the snow had a wonderful gradation over it, and now it's kind of noisy. But if you want things to appear smoother when you have fewer channels, just bring some of your own noise to the table. So this is the Noise HLS, Hue, Lightness, Saturation. I click that on. Let me just reset that to 0, and you'll see as I start to dial up the lightness, how we start to see almost like pollution sort of intersecting into the different areas, right? And it definitely starts to become noisy, right? It becomes an absolute mess at high levels, but at low levels, it's just smoothing things out a little bit. And so if you just put a little bit of noise into the different channels, you're going to get smoothness back into an image that you have posterized. So we're playing with these 2 kind of ideas of introducing noise, posterizing, and we're playing with those 2 basically sliders to make it smoother or rougher, more banding, less banding. And in fact, here's a little tip. If you notice banding in images, throw a little bit of noise in there. That'll chop up the banding, because as you can see, the banding is pronounced right now. But hey, maybe we'll just put a little bit more here, a little bit more there. Oh, banding's gone. I got it. So we're trading off between banding and noise, basically. Or just increase your graphics card. Just put in a bigger graphics card so you can enjoy 32-bit graphics, I guess. But we're trying to fake older graphics, so that we're not doing that. These other 2 here are literally just tinting and curves, just to alter the image down a little bit. And you'll notice that the curves, so the curves adjustment here, I'm making the image darker and I'm increasing the red channel here. So we're just making it a little bit red, but that's also reducing sort of the total number of colors that we're dealing with. Same with tint. So I've put on a tint effect, and you can call that up over here, tint, in the color correction zone. On full, this is going to take all the color out, tinting it to black and white, or whatever you map these colors to. But at 50%, I'm just reducing the saturation, basically. Now you could use an HLS, hue, saturation, lightness effect to do that as well. I like a little tinting and curves, and that kind of gives me a little bit of fine control over these things. I was playing around with, maybe I wanted to tint this to a red, and we'll see if that feels better. But ultimately, there you go. So if you put an image, if you put a video, and you deploy these ideas of posterizing and noise, you're going to get that degraded video look that you're after, or that older, fewer bits per channel. Just remember that maybe this number actually needs to be lower than you think if you want it to start to appear older and older. So think about that. Hopefully that's an idea that will carry through on a few things as you do them. What else is good about this thing? Yeah, it's a Band-Aid. It's a banding Band-Aid, absolutely. This is your banding Band-Aid. Now, let's get into some of the other graphics. One of the more common ones you see going on, looping eternally. This is our loading bar Yule Log. Now, each of these are basically broken off into separate compositions so that I could push them around in time. And this thing needed to loop at 5 seconds, or sorry, 5 minutes. Whew, 5 minutes, that's a lot of time. So in here, we basically have these segments that I sort of gave over to, I'm using markers up here at the top to plan out. I'm going to have ski free happen here. Then we're going to have some ASCII art going on here. And then we'll have snow sweeper happen over here. If you want to set spanned markers out there in the world, you can just hit the asterisk key and then hold down Option when you click on it. And then you can drag out the end and you get a little span. Double click on that and you can actually write in some comments. What here? And now you've got a little label on your timeline. This is super helpful when you are planning out a thing and you're not totally sure what you want to do in certain areas, but you can just set some markers and say to yourself, well, in the future, this is going to happen. I'm going to put this in there. So hopefully that is another little helpful workflow idea. But let's talk about this first window, the most primary of windows. If any of the other elements, jump out as something you want to hear about, please interrupt me. We'll take a detour into those areas as we like. But let's get into the loading log. Window 02, the loading log. There's a few interesting elements in here. I think we've got this candy stripe that's going across, so it's just looking like a candy cane. And then we've got the fire up here. Let's talk about fire. Man's primary fear and greatest tool, fire. I've done the fire almost entirely on one layer. Now, you don't have to, but it is nice to be able to stick all of this stuff onto one layer, and it loops. This is a looping retro fire element. It is made of a bunch of effects, like so, but rather than sort of dissecting it, I want to show you how to make it from scratch. So let's say we didn't have any of that. What we're going to do... yeah. Was it CJ, the red flower? Man. Okay, so let's say we wanted to make that from scratch. Well, I know that I want some pixely stuff going on, so I'm going to go Layer, New, Solid. I'm just going to make a long rectangle. Let's say we make it 4,000 pixels by 1,000 pixels. Right? We make a rectangle of whatever we want. I'll make it black solid. Hit OK. Boop. Now I got this nice big rectangle. Now, generally, when you are doing, I'm going to say like anything that is going to be sort of pixelated or rasterized, you generally want to start with something larger than where you're going to end up with it. Now that can be pretty helpful just in case you need to stretch it out or compress it or do whatever. You've got the space. It's easier to reduce something than it is to add more fidelity to it. So I tend to work as large as I think I'll need. Now, if I'm creating fire, right, well, I need something that's going to generate some randomness. Of course, our best friend for randomness is, get your bingo cards out, it's Fractal Noise. Fractal Noise is practically a free space whenever we are putting this kind of thing together. Fractal Noise generates clouds, and important for our uses, we can evolve it. So what I'm going to do is just solo this, so we're only looking at the Fractal Noise, and I'm going to just go ahead into our evolution options. I'm going to say cycle the evolution, which means that if I were to keyframe this, so I'll keyframe the evolution, and we'll start at 0. Let's move ahead a little bit, and I'll go 1. As it goes once around, 0 and 1 are exactly the same, and it's going to undulate in the middle. Now, that means that I can now tighten or loosen this keyframe, and if I hold down Option, click on the stopwatch, and type in loop, lowercase loop, capital L-O-O-U-T. And then this is the argument of loop out. So we're adding this expression. If you leave it empty, it's going to cycle. You can use other looping methods, offsetting, ping-ponging. For us, let's keep it simple. We're going to cycle. If you don't type anything in there, cycle is assumed. It's going to assume that you are cycling. And would you look at that? We got some cycling fractal noise, right? So there we go. We've got that going on. Now, this doesn't, I'm going to admit to everyone, this doesn't look like fire. And what we need to do is explore some of the other types of fractal noise that we got going on. Could I interest you in a turbulent smooth? Could I interest you in a turbulent basic? Could I interest you in a dynamic, perhaps? Whoop. So dynamic, you can see, looks a lot more like puffy clouds. I'm going to come into the transform, and let's make this quite a bit bigger. So puffy clouds, maybe. How about dynamic progressive? How about dynamic twist? Ooh, okay. Now we're getting somewhere. This is looking close. Now remember, all we're doing is we're getting incrementally closer to what we want. Now, if you're not familiar with all the various fractal types, we got a lot. If you use other programs, you're going to see other forms of fractal that we can enjoy. But in this case, I think we're going to stick with dynamic twist. We're going to go round the twist. Anyone watching from Australia, let me know. And we are going to come down here to uniform scaling. We're going to take that off, and we are going to make it taller. And then we'll go as wide as we need to here. But here we go. If we go taller, 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 things are looking a little bit more fiery, right? We're getting that verticality that we would want from flames. Now it kind of twists and warps, and it's not exactly what we're after, but it's close, right? We're getting closer. Now, of course, fire comes from the bottom and rises, so we don't really want, the whole thing to be here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a mask. I'm going to just draw a mask over the bottom part of this thing. And we can come into the fractal noise, and we can come on down to the compositing options. There we go. Give that a click. And say, hey, use mask 1. Only show up where mask 1 is. Let's go back into mask 1. Give that a bit of a feather. So we feather that out a little bit. Oh my goodness, it's looking more and more like fire all the time. You got to be happy with this. Verticality, that's a word. Verticality is a word. When someone's got big ups, we say they got good verticality. Okay, so there we go. We got our first part of the fire, right? Man make fire. Nailing it. As in humanity make fire. Or Prometheus steal fire. Also good. But I feel like we need more in here, right? So I'm going to duplicate that fractal noise to make fractal noise 2. And similarly, I need a second mask to kind of go with it. So fractal noise 2, I want you to look in your compositing options. Just look at mask 2, and you use mask 2. I'm going to make mask 2 kind of green so that you can see the difference between them. So if we take mask 2 here, same thing, right? And we're just going to move its path up just a little bit like this. And fractal noise 2, I don't want to be dynamic twist. I think I'm actually going to move it onto basic like that. But right now it's overwriting all the hard work that we already did. So I'm going to change its blending mode to add. So now we've got 2 fractals noises that are interfacing with each other. And now we can kind of blend them into each other like this. So now we're getting a lot more hot spots down near the bottom here. Isn't that working out quite nicely? I gotta say, I think that's working out. Getting a lot more fiery all the time. And maybe on that basic, what we want to do is actually deal with its transform a little bit. Maybe we bring its kind of height scale down and its width scale, and we kind of play around with these. And remember, we're trying to use these things to add into each other to produce the effect of hot zones and gray zones, right? So, fractals, nailed it. This looks kind of like undulating fire. We got looping undulating fire. That's pretty good. If I was working on making, say, Fallout 1 and 2 excellent video games, or maybe Curse of Monkey Island. No, Curse of Monkey Island had some great pixel art. That was all manually done. But I think we're ready to just start deploying some other stuff on here now. First, let's put a mosaic onto that. So we're going to put the stylized mosaic onto this. And what that will do is it breaks it up into blocks. Now, if we remember this layer's solid settings, it's 4,000 by 1,000. So I'm going to say, hey, why don't you give me 40 by 10? Now, already you can see, interesting. So now we've got kind of pixelated fire. If we were just to multiply this by, say, 3, and then 10 times 3, there we go. So there we go. Now we've got some pixelated looping fire, and the mosaic is what's controlling how pixelated that is. As long as you keep it in the ratio of 4:1, we're going to have squares. That's what we want. So we got hip to be a square here. I'm going to throw down a posterize. Our old friend Posterize is back. And we're going to posterize this down to, I'll say 8. We could go 8 on this. But look at that banding. Look at that banding that's going on. So how do we reduce our banding? Noise HLS, come to the rescue. All we really want to do is introduce into this mess, right, a little bit of grain. A little bit of grain. So we put a little bit of lightness grain in there, and that might do it. Now, the other thing you might think about is deploying it in different areas. Just remember that if our goal was to make it pixelated, we probably need the noise to happen a different place than the pixelation. So think about that. That can help break up our banding. Maybe the banding is actually something that you enjoy because it's producing that look. But remember, the noise and the posterize are the two things that we're going to play with to get that looking specifically how we want. Right? We're playing between those two objects. Doesn't look like fire yet. Obviously, there's something missing. It's color. So I'm going to now come in and put a tritone after it. Now, putting tritone after the posterize, it's a judgment call which way you want to go with that. I want to kind of firmer control with the colors. So I'm going to go ahead and give our midtones. Our midtones are going to get kind of an orangey cast to them. So orangey red type of deal. But the highlights, I'm going to push those into the yellow zone. So those I'm going to put firmly into the yellow, right? Actually, I'm cutting into the greens there, but something like that, right? Something like this. Now, you might even go full yellow like that if you really, really want like that. And if tritone isn't quite doing it for you, then maybe CC toner, you could drop down a CC toner on this, which is like the Pokemon evolved form. We're going from Charmander to Charmeleon on this thing, and you can go to pentatone, which will give you 5 tones to think about. So, for example, let's say our midtones, actually, you know what? Maybe bright white is an acceptable kind of middle. And then let's see, let's get this going into this kind of like a yellow into here, and then we start to get into an orange, and then even towards the top of the fire is getting darker into the reds here, something like that. Maybe this is more in line with what you're thinking. But another thing that you should probably be aware of is we want to deploy something like a curves or a levels into this. Let's slip that in right here. So for example, if you want more sort of dark areas, we start to clip the dark parts. If you want more bright areas, you start to clip the bright on there. If you want fewer of those, you go like that. And then you just start messing with the S curve on here to make it more or less pronounced. So we're getting some stuff like that. Now, again, let's say again, when do you posterize, before or after this? It's totally up to you. But you can see how now we have undulating fire. Evan make fire. We nailed it. And this is looping. Remember, this is going to loop within this evolution. So we know this needs to last for 5 minutes. So we need to have this be a factor of that. So what loops within 5 minutes? Well, a lot of things. There's a lot of seconds within there. So I mean, a two second burst of this might be pretty good. So we'll just go ahead and play this through. And you can enjoy this kind of undulating fire. Now, of course, older technologies we're not looking at, what we say, 60 frames a second, 4K, 120 FPS for our true gamers out there. But what we want is to maybe posterize the time. So just like we can crunchitize our pixels together, we can posterize our time, bring us down to, say, an 8 frames per second. And now, even though the entire composition is chugging along at 24, 30, whatever, this is updating less. You should look at that. I think this is pretty good. I don't know, Ultima Online, EverQuest type things. I'm going to be throwing out some mid-90s gaming references for the next half hour. So if that's repellent, you just let me know. Simon Abrams, what's going on? Always happy to see another Abrams hanging out in the chat. There's many of us around the world. We're all over the place. All right. EverQuest, more like EvanQuest. Please, nobody Photoshop my face on the EverQuest box. That would be terrifying. But yeah, so that's fire. We've done it. We did the fire part. So hopefully that is a nice looping element. I'm going to say this before we get away from that. Anything we make with the Fractals noises, anything that is fractal noise based can be looped in this way. You saw many, many types of fractal noise that we have, and fractal noise is just creating black and white values for us to then do whatever we want with afterwards. So from these humble beginnings, we can go into all sorts of different directions. And if you roll through a whole lot of the presets that are in here when it comes to backgrounds and stuff like that. Actually, here's a little preview for you all. Here is, for example, some anime speed lines that also begin their life as fractal noise. So this is a fractal noise as well. And if you wanted to kind of deploy these kind of like this, anyway, something to think about, that these begin their life as fractal noise, right? So fractal noise is, I want to say, one of the essential building blocks of effects. So hopefully that carries you far. All right, let us return to the desktop. Actually, you know what we should do? I should get back into that desktop. Ooh, where are you? Where are you? And we'll return to the original, return it to the way it was, so we can talk about some of the other elements. Let's see. The candy bar. No, this is a candy cane. Candy cane stripe here. How do we make this type of a thing, right? If we just want to observe a little bit of that going through. Now, it looks pretty basic. I'm not going to lie. There's not a lot sort of going on here, but it's a nice, simple, repeatable element that I think kind of bears investigation. Now, obviously, I went a little bit overboard in here, but we'll just kind of chop it up with what's going on and how it works and why it works. We've got a simple white solid, and then we get into some stripes. So these are all just being made using some shape layers. And shape layers are hopefully not particularly threatening to people, but it's pretty basic what we're doing with them. Let's say we wanted to make some candy stripes out of some shape layers. Well, let's begin by just making a rectangle. So I'm going to double click on the rectangle. It'll produce a rectangle that's in the middle center of our composition here. We already made red stripes, so let's go ahead and make some green stripes. So I'm going to make some forest green, some Kelly green stripes in here. That's not Kelly green. Never mind. Takesies backsies. So we're going to make some nice green stripes. And so in the fill, right, this is where all information is. We've got our rectangle 1. If we call up the contents, right, you twirl into them here. You can also, if you go window, you could enjoy the properties. Oh, it's already open somewhere. Where are you? There we go. We select this, we get the properties panel. So you can see a lot of the same things being repeated over here. So it might be useful to use the properties panel. So I'll use this to shrinkitize this, shrink us down this way. So we got a smaller rectangle. And important though, shape transform. What are we transforming? Well, we're transforming this group called rectangle 1. So if I go ahead and give that a little skew, that's going to create the angle that we want of those stripes. Now, what we need is more of them. And in order to do that, I would say we want to add to this a repeater. Now, the repeater, as the name suggests, repeats, right? So we're just going to make more. Make more, make merry. And how many copies do you want? I don't know, like a bunch. Give me like 20 of them. And then the offset is, which way are we offsetting this? Now, if you've used other kind of repeaters and such, you'd be probably familiar with this. But as you see, as we go by whole numbers, right, then the whole thing is kind of shifting. Maybe I'm going to need 25. I don't know. Let's just crank it up to 30. It doesn't matter. And we can set it up like this, so it's taking up the whole ding dang thing, right? It's taking up the whole space. And really, if I want this to appear to move left or right, just keyframe the offset. We're going to go from -18 to -19. Ugh, not negative 100, -19 is the one we're going to do. So we're just offsetting by 1, and it looks like it's moving, right? It looks like the whole thing is having a shift for us. Well, that's great. Hold down Option, click on the offset. And what are we going to type in here? We are going to type in loop, lowercase, capital O-U-T. And it's going to assume a cycle. And would you look at this? Look at what's happening. We're offsetting by 1, and then it does it again and again and again. We've got this last one over here that's kind of giving the game away. That's telling us, hey, wait a minute. Wait a minute. What are you doing? Right? You can see it clicking through, but how about I just increase it? I'll just increase the number of copies, then we won't notice that. And look at this. We got an infinitely scrolling line of these things because we're just offsetting the copies by that amount. The other thing that you can do here in your repeater, come to your transform of the repeater. You want these to be spaced out a little bit more, maybe spaced out a little bit less. Right? That's what we're dialing in here. How offset, how different is one repetition from the next, so we can tighten or loosen that as required. So that's one way that we can produce candy cane stripes like that, which I think is pretty nice. Then it's just a matter of how many of them do you want? What direction do you want them to go in? If you want them to feel like they're going in the opposite direction, just take these 2 keyframes, right-click, keyframe assistant, time reverse. Now they're going in a different direction, right? They seem to be going that way. Now, one thing that I did with these, this is our fresh one, I made a couple of instances of the thicker stripes. So let's look at one of them, right? They look like this. I put a bevel alpha, so they kind of get beveled down a little bit. And then I made a duplicate of them, but only half as many. And in fact, only half as many of them, and I've spaced them out twice as much. So it's like every other one is this stripe. You put them over top of each other and you end up with sort of up stripes and down stripes. And then I put some smaller stripes in between them, and the smaller stripes pass above and below the other stripes, creating this sort of undulation that goes through. And so you can see that sometimes they go over, sometimes they go under, depending on which one they are passing by. This creates a little bit of visual interest as this thing is going along, and hopefully that is useful to make that kind of a thing. Just remember, we only have to loop the smallest period of this thing. So that's why we're really only offsetting just a little bit, and then that loop makes it feel like it's forever scrolling. It isn't. It's only moving 1 unit and then repeating that over and over again, but that produces the feeling like it's going constantly and forever, which it is not. Yeah, half as many, twice as much. Hey, old friend Big Like a Pro, what's going on, man, over on the YouTubes? Thanks for joining in. Oh boy, we're at 40 minutes. We spent 40 minutes here on this stuff. So what else to get into? What else is sort of vital? The ASCII art. We must speak on the ASCII art. Mission critical stuff here. And it doesn't really matter which one of these we really dip into, but I think the star is maybe my most favorite of them. My most favorite. So ASCII art, which is sort of trying to make things with text, clack, 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 so it looks like pictures. I did this on a Tandy machine when I was too young to understand what the thing even did. I just knew that print screen made the paper come out, and this is sort of what I spent a lot of time doing as a child. We're not doing it in the traditional way. We're gonna do it in a trick way, right? So what is the trick? How does the trick work? Well, step one of the trick is we must create for ourselves a map. And this map that we create, it can be anything. This could be any type of footage. It could be any type of text or image, whatever it is, it doesn't matter, right? In my case, I have created a star, a beautiful rotating star. It's three-dimensional. We're using the Cinema 4D renderer here so that I can extrude it. But again, it does not matter. It doesn't matter what this is. It can be anything at all. So in this case, the raw material is this star. I put a parallel light on it. We've got a camera in the space so I can mess with the perspective. And we've got this rotating star. All right, so big thumbs up to us for that. But if we look at some of the others, we're feeding into this, for example, an orb. Well, an ornament. I don't know why I call it an orb. But the raw material looks like this. And this is making use of the CC sphere effect in order to rotate a pretty basic type of ornament here. Yeah, fake sweater. Absolutely. Absolutely. You can do this, make a fake sweater. And then what else we got? We got a tree. So we went with a tree in here. And the tree is, I mean, it's not a lot going on with it. It's a bunch of fractal noise on some triangles and then a kind of star rotating up at the top of the tree. Now, what goes on top of all of them is pretty critical. This is an important part. And you get this adjustment layer, and it is deploying a mosaic that will force everything to be square, or at least a known quantity and size of blocks. So this is super important that this mosaic behaves the way you intend it to. So in this case, I need to make blocks of a certain size. Now, they're not squares, they're longer rectangles because that's what the font I'm going to be working with is doing. And I am posterizing it down to 4 levels. 1, 2, 3, 4 of them. Now, I think in some of the other ones, I'm doing 6 levels on this one, for example. The rotating star, how many levels is that one? It's doing 6 levels as well. So that's important too. So the size of the block, you want to be able to calculate that, and you need to be able to figure out how many levels of that you require. Let's go back into how this is deployed. Each of those levels, if we look at level 6 here, is being isolated. So I'm using the extract effect, and extract allows you to dial in sort of which band of, in this case, luminance, how dark or bright am I allowing to be visible here? Now, you've probably seen this effect or this technique deployed in a number of different ways. I think Ben Marriott uses it in a really nice way to make a kind of animated dollar bill in a really great way. I think this is one of the great examples you'll find out on the internet. I use it a lot for kind of more pixelated stuff. But what I'm doing is essentially I'm using the extract effect, which you can find over here, keying extract, and I'm selecting, how much of this do I want to keep, right? How much of this do I want to look at? How much are we going to see of this particular thing? So as you expand the range, you can see now I'm getting these blocks and those blocks, but you really only want one type of block per layer, which gives us in the end, if we just keep sort of deploying all these things, here's the level 5, here's the 4, here's the 3, here's the 2, here's the 1, we got them all. We've got one layer that represents each level of the thing. Now from there, we need some stuff. So for example, let's start with the base layer. I want to make sure that we can actually see it. So here's just a text layer, and I'm using a monospaced font. If we give it no mat, you'll see what it is. Run star.art ... end, right? And I used a text layer because this allows me to animate the text. I'm just using the simple typewriter preset to allow these things to animate or load on, right? And what's going on with this is I'm then using the track mat feature here to point at, in this case, we're going to point at level 6, which means these, these texts, right? These letters, these glyphs will only show up where the level 6 is. Remember, level 6 is the darkest. So I went with the period for the darkest, or the full stop. Level 2, what do we got here? Asterisks. Which one is this one referencing? Hold on, this one is looking at level 1. So the brightest shall be asterisks. Asteri? I don't know. Then we got some slashes. We've got some H's. We got some O's. Ho, 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 Christmas. I'll put in some X's for Xmas. But that will give us all of the component parts we need. Remember, that thing is updating. Our map is updating, which updates each of these, which themselves, if I just mention in here, where did I posterize the time? I posterized it up here in this layer up here at the top. So this is effectively posterizing our time. But if you don't have that on, it's all super smooth. Super smooth kind of updates to that Mosaic stuff. So there you go. That's the way that you can produce ASCII art. It's all down to what you place into that thing. So if you download, I'll remind you, you can download the project files for this stuff. Get your hands on these and try to deploy this in different ways. I've used it as just a large wall of emoji. You could use this as a bunch of little pictures. You could do anything that you can basically put into a grid, an anticipatable grid. So just want to kind of reiterate a few things before I move on from this thing. If there's any questions, do let me know in the chat, and I'll try to make sure that it's making sense and it's working for folks. So I just wanted to reiterate, if you get into one of these things here, right? The Mosaic here is 30 by 20, 30 blocks by 20 blocks. Why is that number important? Well, these are mono-spaced fonts. So in this case, Andale Mono. And Andale Mono, I've got it set to 28 points. There's 24 pixels between each line. I've offset them a little bit like this. And if we just solo, not that one, let's solo the base here because there's a lot of them. If we solo that, I just want to show you that I needed to use a mosaic in here that has 30 by 20 to try to precisely line up this, which is literally the number of characters across by the number of lines down, and manually aligning that using the paragraph tools here to get these, make sure there's only one character per box. It's a little bit fiddly to do, but you can get there by just bumping it a little bit in each direction, getting the lines to line up exactly how you want. That was kind of the easy part because you just set this on one box and then you kind of stretch and compress until you get this specifically where you'd like. The harder part is kind of getting the horizontal in there. So that takes some bumping and fiddling to get it exactly where you might desire. And ultimately, these numbers are going to change depending on the actual width and height of your font that you are using. So how long did it take me to make this thing? Oh, I don't know, off and on for like, I picked at it, so it's tough to say. But this is the idea, that you want to create these things that are going to line up with the grid. Then you create a map that is also lining up with the grid, and that produces the idea that this thing is actually sort of updating and typing and that type of thing. So it's an interesting way of getting those ideas to connect to each other. So hopefully that makes sense when you are creating your ASCII art stuff, dialing that in. Now, there are, of course, ways to then manipulate the text. You could use text animators and all that type of thing that would allow you then to be manipulating the actual like periods and H's and stuff like that. Like you could be warping that stuff around in fun ways and playing around with that. So, do a lot of stuff, but use the grid to reveal all kinds of stuff, right? Emoticons, whatever. It's a great thing to do. Let's see. What else is useful? Oh boy, we have so little time to get together. I want to speak on the snowman. I want to talk about the snowman. So, do you want to build a snowman? I do. This is where I dipped into needing some third-party plugins to help me out. And the snowman itself, oh boy, I'm just going to tap the U key. We're going to zoom in. You can enjoy all of these keyframes. I did not make these keyframes. This is not Evan make keyframes right in here. This made use of a third-party plugin called Newton. And what Newton does is it allows you to run a physics simulator inside of After Effects. So, full disclosure, I didn't animate this manually. That's too much. That's too much. There's no way. There's no way that I'd be able to kind of make that happen with the level of realism that I wanted. Yeah, and I named all the text files the same. They're all snowman1.txt. This would cause us. I should have named them like final. I should have named them like final.txt and stuff like that. So that would have been pretty good. But we've got a top hat. We've got some eyes of coal. I don't know what .coal file extensions would be. We got nose.button. We got the CC pipe, the corncob pipe. Button nose, two eyes made out of coal. Canonically, Frosty is not made of a carrot nose. I want to just let people understand that about what's going on. But here's the important part. Putting the pieces back together, because this has to be a loop. However you end up with a bunch of things on the ground, we have to get back to we have to go back. Any Lost fans hanging out. So all I did to accomplish that is I take the last keyframe, copy and paste it. I take the first keyframe, gingerly selecting that first keyframe, zooming in very close to get that first keyframe, like that, pasting them next to each other, like this. So now we are certainly going from last to first. This keyframe here, I have toggled to be a hold keyframe, so it's forced to hang out before it hits this one. And then this is going to return from first to last. So it's going from here. Well, let's solo this layer. Actually, we don't want to solo that layer because it's not the actual image. But it crashes. And then it's moving back to where it was, right? So all we're doing, right, we're taking the last to the first to the last. I feel like that's a Christmas thing, but I don't totally know what it is. But it's useful to sort of be able to just, that creates our loop, because then we go back to the first one, right? That's pretty much it. And then if you want it to feel more realistic, what you want to do is mess with the motion curve in here. So come into your graph editor, and you're going to see, if we go into the speed graph, this, if you just ease a keyframe, it's not really how we click and move things. So you kind of want to make that a little bit more extreme like that it's fast and then it slows down as we're trying to get into the precise spot. And things, if a human is controlling the mouse, they're probably not moving in a straight line, so we want to kind of curve it, right? We want to sort of curve that motion path. So we want to make sure. Oh yeah, that's the other thing I wanted to mention about this. So when I ran the simulation, when the simulation happened for all this, it was all on rectangles, and then I simply parented new artwork to it. Oh boy, but we are running out of time together. If you want to explore these files more closely, if you want to pick them apart, you want to see all the nitty-gritty bits, all the parts that we didn't cover, you can download them, check out the description, get your hands on those. There is also a motion graphic template that you will hopefully enjoy, so that you can enjoy. Ooh, where is it? Mogert testing. There it is. So that you'll be able to make this look however you like. You can put your own artwork in there. You can use this in Premiere if you want to do all kinds of fun stuff with, and you'll be enjoying your your retro computer graphics over your vlogs and what have you. So hopefully that'll be a good time. But this is the first stream of many today. There's a lot of things going on today. There's a holiday sweepstakes going on, so make sure you enter that. Check out the tab over on Behance. So if you go to behance.net/live/Adobe Live, you'll find the holiday sweepstakes up in the tab. I'm Evan Abrams. You can find me around the internet at EC Abrams. If you want to enjoy this holiday loop, you can check it out. There's a big playlist of great looping things. All of our Yule logs are up on YouTube right now in a playlist. So enjoy some lo-fi beats while you observe our looping wonders. Lots of very talented artists put some awesome things up there. So hopefully you will enjoy those. That's pretty much it. Stick around for a whole bunch of other things today. A lot of great video stuff going on. I hope you do indeed make some more ASCII art out of this. And yeah, so like I say, we got animated greeting cards going on today. We've got some recipe animations. We've got very talented video professionals talking to you all day today, and there are amazing creatives talking to you all week on here. So if I don't see you again for a while, I'm going to be on hiatus, and I'm taking my vacation. So I'll see you in the new year. But yeah, have a great holiday. Be kind to each other. Spend time with your friends and family. Hold each other close in the cold, but stay creative, be kind to each other, and I'll see you all around the internet. Thanks for being with me today. Bye for now.